The sun cast a warm glow over the manicured lawns of Willow Creek as Mark Collins stepped out of his sleek, silver sedan. The suburban neighborhood hummed with the quiet tranquility of a picture-perfect Sunday morning. White picket fences lined the streets, and the scent of freshly cut grass lingered in the air, creating an idyllic backdrop for the lives of its residents. Mark's home stood at the end of a cul-de-sac, a charming two-story house with a cheerful red door and flower boxes overflowing with vibrant blooms. As he approached the front steps, he couldn't help but admire the neat rows of tulips that Emily had planted earlier in the spring. She had always possessed a knack for gardening, infusing their home with warmth and color. Pushing open the front door, Mark was greeted by the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the sound of laughter echoing from the kitchen. His heart swelled with affection as he caught sight of Emily, her radiant smile lighting up the room as she flipped pancakes on the stove. "Morning, sleepyhead," Emily chirped, her eyes twinkling with mischief as she glanced over her shoulder at Mark. "You're just in time for breakfast." Mark grinned, crossing the threshold and enveloping Emily in a warm embrace. Despite the chaos of the work week, moments like these reminded him of the blessings he held dear: a loving wife, 2 beautiful children, and a home filled with laughter and love. Over breakfast, Mark and Emily regaled each other with stories of their week, savoring the simple pleasures of domestic bliss. They shared a playful banter, teasing each other about forgotten grocery lists and missed appointments, the familiarity of their routine a comforting constant in an ever-changing world. As Mark glanced around the kitchen, he couldn't help but marvel at the life they had built together, a life filled with love, laughter, and endless possibilities. In Emily's laughter and the warmth of her touch, he found solace and contentment, grateful for every moment they shared. Little did Mark know, beneath the facade of their perfect life lay a secret that would soon threaten to unravel the carefully constructed illusion of their happiness. But for now, as he basked in the warmth of Emily's smile and the promise of a new day, all seemed right with the world. With a sense of gratitude and anticipation for the adventures that lay ahead, Mark savored the moment, knowing that whatever challenges they faced, they would face them together, as partners, as lovers, and as best friends. And so, in the heart of Willow Creek, amidst the laughter and the love, Mark and Emily Collins embarked on another day in their perfect life, a life that, unbeknownst to them, was about to be irrevocably changed by the secrets that lurked in the shadows. The evening had settled over Willow Creek like a heavy blanket, casting long shadows across the neatly manicured lawns and quiet streets. Inside the Collins suburban home, the air felt charged with tension, crackling with unspoken words and unresolved emotions. Mark Collins sat alone in the dimly lit living room, bathed in the soft glow of lamplight. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and suspicions, each one more damning than the last. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss, that his perfect life with Emily wasn't quite as perfect as it seemed. Fueled by a gnawing sense of unease, Mark found himself drawn to Emily's phone, sitting innocently on the coffee table like a silent accomplice to her secrets. With trembling hands, he unlocked the device, his heart pounding in his chest as he scrolled through her messages, searching for any hint of betrayal. And then he found it. A series of texts between Emily and their neighbor, Tom, exchanged in hushed tones and coded language that left no room for doubt. Words like "meet me" and "can't wait to see you" leaped off the screen, taunting Mark with their cruel implications. His stomach churned with a mixture of anger and disbelief as he read on, each message driving the knife of betrayal deeper into his heart. How could Emily do this to him? To their family? A cold fury washed over Mark as he stared at the damning evidence before him. Without a second thought, he pocketed Emily's phone and stormed up the stairs, his footsteps echoing loudly in the empty house. He found Emily in their bedroom, her expression shifting from surprise to guilt as she caught sight of the phone in Mark's hand. Without a word, he held the device out to her, his eyes burning with accusation. "Explain this," Mark demanded, his voice cold and clipped as he thrust the phone towards Emily. Emily's face paled as she realized the gravity of the situation, her hands trembling as she reached for the phone. "Mark, I can explain," she stammered, her voice thick with guilt. But before she could offer any explanation, Mark's pent-up emotions erupted like a volcano, his voice rising in a torrent of anger and betrayal. "You've been lying to me, Emily." Mark's words were laced with pain and disbelief as he confronted her about her infidelity. "How could you do this to us? To our family?" Emily's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape from Mark's accusing gaze. "It's not what you think," she protested weakly, her voice trembling with fear. "Don't lie to me, Emily." Mark's voice was like a thunderclap, shaking the very foundations of their marriage. "I saw the messages. I know what you've been doing behind my back." But Emily wasn't ready to give up just yet. "Maybe if you had been here more often, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere," she shot back, her words dripping with venom. Mark's heart twisted with pain at her accusation, his mind reeling from the betrayal of her words. "That's not an excuse, Emily," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "There's no justification for what you've done." The bar was dimly lit, the air thick with the mingling scents of alcohol and conversation. Mark sat slumped on a stool, nursing a half-empty glass of whiskey, his mind still reeling from the devastating discovery he had made earlier that evening. Adam, his loyal friend since childhood, sat beside him, a concerned furrow etched into his brow. "I can't believe it, man," Adam said, shaking his head in disbelief. "I never would have guessed Emily would do something like that." Mark's jaw clenched as he nodded in agreement, his thoughts consumed by the betrayal that had shattered his world. "I trusted her, Adam," he muttered, his voice heavy with emotion. "I never thought she'd betray me like this." Adam placed a comforting hand on Mark's shoulder, his expression sympathetic. "I know, buddy," he said, his voice filled with genuine concern. "But you can't let this destroy you. You deserve better than that." Mark nodded, his throat tight with unshed tears. "I know," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the din of the bar. "But it still hurts, Adam. It hurts more than I ever thought possible." As the night wore on and the drinks continued to flow, Mark found himself unable to shake the image of Emily and Tom together, their betrayal burning like a brand on his soul. With each passing moment, his anger simmered beneath the surface, threatening to boil over at any moment. Finally, unable to bear the weight of his emotions any longer, Mark bid Adam farewell and made his way home, his steps heavy with the weight of the truth he carried. As he entered the house, the air felt charged with tension, the silence echoing with the weight of unspoken words. Emily sat alone in the living room, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen from tears. Mark's heart clenched at the sight of her, his anger momentarily forgotten in the face of her obvious pain. "Emily," he said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "We need to talk." Emily's gaze flicked up to meet his, her expression a mix of fear and regret. "Mark, she began, her voice trembling with emotion. But Mark cut her off with a wave of his hand, his own emotions threatening to overwhelm him. "Save it, Emily," he said, his voice tinged with bitterness. "I don't want to hear your excuses anymore." And with that, he collapsed onto the couch, his body racked with sobs as he struggled to come to terms with the reality of Emily's betrayal. "How could you do this to me?" he whispered, his voice filled with anguish. "How could you do this to us?" But Emily had no answers, her own tears mirroring his as she faced the devastating consequences of her actions. And as they sat together in the silence of their shattered marriage, the weight of their grief hung heavy in the air, a stark reminder of the love they had lost. Mark's voice cracked as he continued to question Emily, his words a desperate plea for answers that would never come. "Was I not enough for you, Emily?" he asked, his voice breaking with emotion. "Was I not worth fighting for?" Tears streamed down Mark's cheeks as he buried his face in his hands, the weight of his despair crushing him like a vice. "I gave you everything, Emily," he cried, his voice choked with sorrow. "And this is how you repay me?" With each word, Mark's heart broke a little more, his once unshakable confidence shattered by the betrayal of the woman he loved. And as exhaustion finally claimed him, he curled up on the couch, his tears mingling with the fabric beneath him as he cried himself to sleep, the pain of Emily's betrayal echoing in his dreams. In the quiet solitude of the night, Mark lay awake in bed, his mind consumed by a whirlwind of emotions. The events of the past few days had left him feeling raw and exposed, his heart battered and bruised by the weight of Emily's betrayal. As he lay there in the darkness, his thoughts drifted back to the confrontation with Emily earlier that evening. The pain in her eyes had mirrored his own, a silent testament to the shattered remains of their once happy marriage. But amidst the chaos of his emotions, a nagging voice whispered in the back of Mark's mind, taunting him with doubts and insecurities. What did I do wrong? He wondered, his thoughts a jumbled mess of self-recrimination and doubt. Wasn't I enough for her? Tears pricked at the corners of Mark's eyes as he grappled with the painful truth of his own inadequacy. He had always prided himself on being a good husband, a loving father, but now he couldn't shake the feeling that he had somehow failed Emily, that he had pushed her into the arms of another man. And as the weight of his guilt threatened to suffocate him, Mark felt himself unraveling, his composure slipping away like sand through his fingers. "What's wrong with me?" he whispered into the darkness, his voice choked with emotion. "Why wasn't I enough?" But there were no easy answers, no simple explanations for the turmoil that raged within him. All Mark could do was cling to the fragile threads of his shattered heart and pray that someday, somehow, he would find the strength to piece himself back together again. As dawn broke on a new day, Mark lay curled up in bed, his body racked with sobs as he surrendered to the overwhelming tide of grief and despair. And as he finally succumbed to the embrace of sleep, his dreams were haunted by visions of a life that could have been, a love that had been lost to the cruel hand of fate. As the days passed, Mark and Emily each retreated into their own private worlds, grappling with the fallout of Emily's affair and the shattered remains of their marriage. For Mark, the revelation of Emily's betrayal had ignited a firestorm of doubt and insecurity, leaving him questioning his worth as a husband and a man. Every moment of silence between them felt like an accusation, a reminder of his failure to protect the woman he loved. He threw himself into his work, seeking solace in the familiar rhythms of his daily routine. But no matter how hard he tried to bury his pain beneath the distractions of the outside world, the ache in his heart refused to be silenced. Late one night, as he sat alone in the dimly lit kitchen, nursing a cup of cold coffee, Mark found himself face to face with the uncomfortable truths he had been running from. He had spent so long trying to be the perfect husband, the perfect father, that he had lost sight of his own needs and desires along the way. With a heavy heart, Mark realized that he had become complacent in his marriage, content to coast along on the surface without ever delving into the deeper complexities of their relationship. And now, faced with the harsh reality of Emily's infidelity, he couldn't help but wonder if he had played a role in driving her away. Meanwhile, Emily grappled with her own demons, tormented by feelings of guilt and remorse for the pain she had caused. She had never intended to hurt Mark, never imagined that her actions could have such devastating consequences. But as she reflected on the choices she had made, Emily was forced to confront the uncomfortable truth that she had been searching for something outside of her marriage, something she had convinced herself she couldn't find at home. In the quiet solitude of her thoughts, Emily realized that she had been seeking validation and excitement in all the wrong places, oblivious to the damage she was causing to the very foundation of her family. And as the weight of her mistakes settled heavily upon her shoulders, she knew that she could no longer hide from the truth. Together, Mark and Emily faced the painful reality of their fractured marriage, each grappling with their own feelings of inadequacy and guilt. But amidst the chaos of their emotions, a glimmer of hope began to flicker, a faint beacon of light illuminating the path towards forgiveness and redemption. For as they confronted the uncomfortable truths of their past, Mark and Emily realized that their love was worth fighting for, that they were stronger together than they ever could be apart. And with that realization came the first tentative steps towards healing, towards rebuilding the shattered pieces of their broken hearts and forging a new path forward together. Chapter 5: Rebuilding Trust. In the aftermath of their confrontation and the painful realizations they faced, Mark and Emily found themselves at a crossroads. They both knew that rebuilding their marriage would not be easy, but for the sake of their children and the love they still harbored for each other, they were willing to try. Mark took the first step towards healing by reaching out to a marriage counselor, determined to confront the issues that had driven them apart and find a way back to each other. Emily was hesitant at first, wary of dredging up painful memories and facing the consequences of her actions, but she ultimately agreed to give counseling a chance. Their first session was tense and awkward, filled with uncomfortable silences and stilted conversation. But as they delved deeper into the tangled web of their emotions, Mark and Emily began to open up to each other in ways they never thought possible. The counselor guided them through exercises designed to foster communication and empathy, encouraging them to listen to each other's perspectives without judgment or blame. And slowly, as they peeled back the layers of hurt and resentment that had built up over the years, Mark and Emily began to see glimpses of the love that had once bound them together. Outside of their counseling sessions, Mark and Emily made a conscious effort to spend quality time together as a family, rekindling the bonds that had been strained by their recent struggles. They took their children on outings to the park, cooked meals together in the kitchen, and shared quiet moments of intimacy in the sanctuary of their home. But despite their best efforts, there were still moments of doubt and insecurity that threatened to derail their progress. Mark found himself struggling to trust Emily again, haunted by the specter of her betrayal and the fear that history would repeat itself. And Emily, for her part, grappled with feelings of shame and guilt, unsure if she would ever be able to make amends for the pain she had caused. Yet, amidst the uncertainty and the challenges they faced, Mark and Emily refused to give up hope. They knew that rebuilding trust would take time and patience, but they were willing to put in the work if it meant salvaging their marriage and preserving the love they shared. And as they embarked on this journey together, hand in hand, they dared to believe that they could overcome the obstacles that stood in their way and emerge stronger and more resilient than ever before. For in the crucible of their pain and their perseverance, Mark and Emily discovered the true meaning of love and forgiveness and the power it held to heal even the deepest wounds of the heart. The days had passed with a fragile sense of hope lingering in the air as Mark and Emily navigated their journey towards rebuilding trust. Yet, beneath the surface, doubts still lurked, shadows of uncertainty that threatened to extinguish the flicker of optimism they clung to. Suddenly, there was a sharp knock at the door, breaking the stillness of the night. Mark's heart skipped a beat as he rose from his seat, his footsteps echoing loudly in the empty house. He hesitated for a moment before opening the door, a sense of trepidation gnawing at his gut. There, lying on the welcome mat, was a single envelope. Mark's brow furrowed in confusion as he picked it up, his fingers trembling slightly as he tore it open. Inside, he found a letter addressed to Emily, the words written in a hand that sent a chill down his spine. As he read the contents of the letter, Mark's world shattered around him. It was from Tom, their neighbor, detailing their plan to run away together to Los Angeles, leaving behind their families and starting a new life together. The shock and disbelief washed over Mark in a wave of raw emotion. He staggered backwards, his heart pounding in his chest as he struggled to comprehend the magnitude of what he had just discovered. How could Emily do this to him? To their children? Without a second thought, Mark raced out of the house, his footsteps pounding against the pavement as he searched for answers. He needed to confront Emily, to demand an explanation for her actions, no matter how painful the truth might be. But deep down, in the depths of his heart, Mark knew that this revelation had shattered any hope of salvaging their marriage. For how could he ever trust Emily again, knowing that she had been planning to leave him all along? As he stood alone in the darkness, the weight of Emily's betrayal pressing down on him like a heavy burden, Mark realized with a heavy heart that their relationship was irreparable. And as tears welled in his eyes, he made a silent vow to himself. He would confront Emily, he would demand answers, but he would never allow himself to be hurt by her again. The night hung heavy with tension as Mark, fueled by a mixture of rage and anguish, returned home with the damning letter in hand. His heart pounded in his chest, each step heavier than the last, as he confronted the reality that Emily's infidelity was not just a plan but a betrayal in motion. As he entered their home, the air felt charged with the weight of impending confrontation. Mark's eyes scanned the room, seeking signs of Emily and Tom, his hands clenching and unclenching in anticipation. A muted sound drew him towards the bedroom, the door slightly ajar, and Mark's stomach twisted with a sickening premonition. Pushing the door open, he was met with a sight that shattered whatever remained of his already broken heart. There, in their marital bed, were Emily and Tom entwined in a sickening tableau of betrayal. Mark's breath caught in his throat, the world around him narrowing to the scene before his eyes. Fury surged within him as he processed the sight, his vision tinged with red. Without a moment's hesitation, Mark lunged at Tom, the punch connecting with a sickening thud. Tom recoiled, blood oozing from his split lip as he crumpled against the headboard. "You son of a bitch!" Mark's voice was a guttural growl, his fists raining down on Tom in a storm of pent-up rage. "You thought you could just take her from me, huh? Destroy my family?" Tom, bloodied and battered, sneered through swollen lips. "Maybe if you were a better husband, she wouldn't be looking for someone else," he spat out, a cocky grin forming despite the pain. Mark's eyes flashed with a deadly intensity as he pulled Tom up by the collar, his voice a low, seething growl. "You have no idea what you've done. This ends now." As the room spun with the echoes of violence and betrayal, Mark felt a sickening mix of devastation and rage. The realization that Emily had betrayed him once again hit him like a physical blow, a cruel twist of the knife that left him gasping for breath. In the midst of the chaos, Mark's world crumbled around him, the foundation of trust obliterated beyond repair. Emily's actions, combined with Tom's taunts, created a tempest of emotions that threatened to engulf him. With a heavy heart and fists stained with the consequences of his fury, Mark stood amidst the wreckage of his shattered marriage, a broken man whose trust had been betrayed not once but twice. With a heavy heart and a sense of resignation, Mark made the difficult decision to call the police, his voice trembling with the weight of his words. He couldn't ignore the gravity of Emily and Tom's actions, nor could he allow them to escape the consequences of their betrayal. As the police arrived to take Emily and Tom into custody, Mark's heart ached with a sense of finality. The life he had once known was gone, replaced by a tangled web of broken dreams and shattered trust. But amidst the chaos and despair, Mark found solace in the love of his children, the precious few moments of joy they shared together serving as a beacon of light in the darkness. With a heavy heart, he called his parents, asking them to come and take the children for a while, knowing that he needed time to heal and rebuild in the wake of the devastation. In the days and weeks that followed, Mark embarked on a journey of self-discovery and redemption, seeking solace in the simple pleasures of everyday life. He threw himself into his work, finding comfort in the familiar rhythms of routine and responsibility. Yet, despite his efforts to move forward, the pain of Emily's betrayal still gnawed at him, a constant reminder of the scars that marred his heart. He grappled with feelings of anger and resentment, struggling to come to terms with the enormity of what had been taken from him. But as time passed, Mark began to find peace in the knowledge that he had done everything he could to seek justice and closure. He filed for divorce, severing the final ties that bound him to Emily and the wreckage of their broken marriage. And as the legal proceedings unfolded, Mark watched with a sense of grim satisfaction as Emily and Tom faced the consequences of their actions. The charges against them served as a reminder that no one was above the law and that justice would always prevail in the end. Through acts of selflessness and sacrifice, Mark found redemption in the face of betrayal, emerging from the ashes of his shattered marriage stronger and more resilient than ever before. And though the scars of his past would always linger, he knew that he had the power to shape his own future, to build a life filled with love and hope, free from the shadows of the past.